And now, from Shenango Valley Studios, the most popular live show in the Shenango Valley, because it is currently the only live show in the Shenango Valley, we bring to you the Zip Code. Thank you, folks. Thank you for tuning in. We got a heck of a show for you tonight. I'm super excited to have Joe Crispin on. Many of you know him. Many of you will get to know him. A legendary Penn State basketball guy. We're going to bring him on in a couple minutes, but I want to first thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you have a question for Joe throughout the live show, I would ask that you would type it in the chat, and we will hopefully get to that sometime throughout the night with Joe. So if you want to type that in the chat, that would be great. The other thing you can do is you can follow us on Instagram at _zip code. You can follow us on Facebook with just the zip code, and you can follow us on YouTube as well with the zip code. So we've now had many guests, so you can go back and you can watch some of those if you've missed some. But I want to thank you for tuning in. Please enjoy the show. Like I said, any questions, just let us know. Right now I'm going to bring in Joe Crispin from Rowan College, and we will get to it. So let me bring him in here. Joe, thanks for joining the show, man.
My pleasure.
I just want to let you know beforehand that some people have dodged the show. So, there's maybe some pressure that goes along with that hot seat you're sitting in.
It was too big for him, huh?
Yeah. So last week we had Jawan Johnson on, who who's a New Jersey boy as well, like yourself.
Yeah.
And he did pretty well. He can take the pressure. So I'm assuming a guy like you will just be just fine.
I think I'll be all right. I'll be all right.
Yeah. So we're gonna get to some questions here. We're gonna get to the history of your basketball career. But first, I'm gonna throw this at you. ESPN just released their newly updated top 10 basketball players ever. And I want to see if you have any discrepancies here, any comments. So we got Jordan first, then we have LeBron. 3 is Kareem. 4, Bill Russell. 5, Magic. 6, Wilt Chamberlain. 7, Larry Bird. 8, Tim Duncan. 9, Kobe. And 10, Shaq. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think the guys who put the list together spent way more time coming up with reasons than I would ever in a million years. And as far as I'm concerned, once you reach the top 10, I mean, with the exception of Jordan, I mean, LeBron is incredible, but I think Jordan is number one. And shoot, after those guys, like, who aren't you taking? Like, these guys are unbelievable basketball players. I'm sure that a lot of Kobe fans are a little bit, or not so little bit, thinking he should be higher.
Yeah, Magic has even come out and said that Kobe's one of the best Lakers of all time. So, he maybe should be above Magic. I don't know. But, I mean, just like we talked about earlier, it just could be because I grew up with Kobe and not Magic. I don't know.
Yeah, and judging them, again, you're judging them on the basis of where they were and how they played at their time. I mean, those guys are tough to argue with. I mean, Russell, Chamberlain, most dominant forces in the history of basketball at the time. Like, these are guys, every single one of them is a guy who changed the game. So when you think about the newer players, I always tell people, like, I do think the modern day players are often better than the older players. Shoot, you go watch those games from the 70s and 80s, and you're like, I think I could hop out there now sometimes with the wide open, how open they were, at least on offense, the 3-point line. But when you judge them on the basis of what they were working with, like I think I said to other people about Kobe was building on, and Kobe said that in the Jordan documentary, he's building on what Jordan already gave everybody. So he was humble enough to recognize that. I give him credit for it, because that's what the modern guy players do.
Right. And I think in essence, if anybody's truly honest with themselves, they have to thank and they have to appreciate the guys slash the teachers that came before them, because they are who they are because of those guys that came before them.
Yeah, they reap where they haven't sown. They really have. And that's true financially, but it's also true on the basketball level too.
Right. Absolutely. So let's jump in here. Let's start with your high school career. Then we'll just kind of make our way through the ranks here. Then we'll get to some questions. Then we will get to everybody's favorite part of the show, which is the rapid fire round, where that's where the real pressure is. I just ask you random questions.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. Yeah. So born 1979 in New Jersey and graduated with 2,654 high school points. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know that they kept track of. I don't know if I kept track of shot attempts back then, but that is the amount I scored.
We can see you on the phone.
This is my 5-year-old coming in saying we can see you on the phone. It's great.
Nice.
Well,
Well,
he wanted to get in.
yeah,
We didn't keep track of shot attempts, fortunately, but I was given the gift of a neon green light pretty much. I don't know if I was given it right away or I took it. There's some debate about that. I probably did the same thing. Actually, come to think of it, I probably did that pretty much everywhere I went. I don't know if I was given a green light or I just took it. There's a big difference.
well, hey, if you just took the green light, then eventually you earned it, right? That's how it works.
True. I would like to think that at least.
Right. Hey, it's on them to come up to you and say, "Hey, Joe, you got the red light now." I don't think they ever did that to you, correct?
They might have tried. And it just kind of went the other way. I always tell people in basketball, I was a rebel in some respects on the court. I typically wasn't a rebel in the rest of life, but I was a rebel on the court, and I always had a chip on my shoulder. If you told me I couldn't do something, I would just do it until it worked, and then you couldn't really argue with me. And that's probably why I wasn't always the easiest to coach.
Well, the best part of all that, in my opinion, is you're doing it at 6 foot.
Yeah, I guess sometimes I forget. My kids are funny because some old pictures will flash across the screen or videos will come up, and they'll always say, "Dad, you were so small." And looking back, I mean, there was an old Lakers picture when one of my first gigs with the Lakers' first games, and I was like, "Wow, you're right. I was small." But when you're on a basketball court and that's your world, I never thought of myself like that at all. I never really felt like I was small. But nowadays, too, with the amount of guys that are 6'9" guards, geez, yeah, I guess I was. So, yeah, looking back, I guess it's not typical that the 6 foot, especially the 6 foot white guy from the suburbs, doesn't get to do that a lot of times in basketball.
Well, I appreciate that. When I first met you at Victory Fitness in State College working out, and somebody said, "Yeah, he plays professional basketball." I'm like, wow. He's 6 foot. I'm 5'9¾". So I have a major appreciation for you doing it just about 2 inches taller than me, going at it and having all the success that you did. Because like you said, now you think that basketball is just a tall man's game for a lot of people. But to your point, growing up, your height was your height. If you love basketball, you found a way to get around that.
Yeah, and frankly, I was fortunate. There's so many things when you talk about reaping where you have that sown. I mean, there was plenty of things in my career that didn't go my way, but there were so many things that did. And I grew up in a small town. I had a good group of friends. I had a good group of athletes around me. I had a good high school coach, but we weren't so good that I couldn't come in as a freshman and start varsity and have the ball in my hands and fail some more. I was given the ability and the opportunity to fail early on, from a scoring perspective, from a creative perspective in basketball. And, looking back on it, it was an incredible gift. And it's just one that you start looking around, and very few players get that gift at such a pivotal time in their career. And I often tell people, like, the opportunities I was given at 14 years old, 15 years old in high school really were formative to me, incredibly formative to me and to my entire career. The skills I developed, and just the way I viewed myself was probably in large part formed during that time.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing where you're never playing scared. And
No, and the only reason I was is because of me. I had a high school coach who was ahead of his time. We shot threes, we played fast, we played aggressive. And again, I had a good group of athletes around us for a small school. And we were all friends because we grew up in a small town. But people forget, like we're talking the mid 90s, it wasn't like a popular thing to play fast and to shoot threes and be aggressive. And that's Coach Harper. That's what he did with us. And he empowered me probably most of all to take the most risks. And, looking back, like I scored 34 points in my second high school game and we were down, and it wasn't a pretty 34. It wasn't like I was just amazing. And I had some really ugly moments looking back in the game. But when you think about being empowered to risk and take advantage of things and just go for it, so many players, I mean, geez, I see it all the time now as a coach. Like, so many players are just so used to playing scared basketball that they've grown up playing that way. And I always tell them, you got to go to rehab and learn how to play with some guts again.
And we'll talk about your coaching career in a little bit here, but I'm assuming that's one of the things that you instill in your players at Rowan currently.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's who I am. So it's what I got to pass on, right?
Yep, absolutely. So we'll get to Penn State here in a second, but I'm going to show this question, or this just is from Courtney Jackson. Hey, Joe, long time playing against you and your brother. How did you feel about playing Glassboro?
That's great. It's great too that you had Juwan on here last week. What was funny for Courtney, I was during this quarantine, I have his old box of tapes. And number one, I live in Glassboro now, but I grew up wearing Glassboro stuff. Like, I was a Glassboro dude because my dad was the head coach at Glassboro. So Pittman and Glassboro were rivals. And I really, even though I lived in Pittman as a kid, I was a Glassboro kid before I was a Pittman kid. People don't know that, because when I was a kid, like one time I remember Glassboro losing to Pittman in the 80s, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a travesty. But early in my high school career, they used to smoke us, and they were tough, and they got the better of us plenty. And then by the end of my high school career, the tables turned a little bit, or a lot of bit, depending on how you look at it. But to me, that was always the fun rivalry. Like Pittman and Glassboro, my brother and I live right on the border now. In Glassboro, but we call both places home. So we used to love those matchups. That's where it was.
I was joking with Jawan because he saw that I was having you on. He messaged me and I said, yeah, man, I think the show's just turned into me trying to find guys that are willing to come on the show in South Jersey.
South Jersey boys.
Hey,
South Jersey boys.
I'll take anybody from South Jersey that wants to come on the show. There's an open invitation for anybody.
I think there's a good lineup. You can get a good lineup together.
I'd like that. So talk real fast about the recruiting process, you coming out of high school. You guys won a state championship, correct?
Yeah, I had an interesting recruiting process, and because I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. It was just a unique situation. I probably wasn't an obvious Division I player until my senior year. Just looking back, I physically just wasn't quite there yet. I had a lot of skill. But when I look back at video of myself as a junior, I was a really good player. But my senior year, I was a great player. And some of that was just age, and some of it was physical maturity. I was young for my class. I graduated at 17. So I showed up at Penn State, just turned 18. That's why I redshirted all my boys. But looking back, I just really didn't pay a ton of attention to the recruiting process. I really believed that I was a Division I player, and I believed the Lord had a good spot for me. I didn't have any particular idea in mind how it was going to work out or whatever. That's what I believed. I felt like that was going to happen. So with the exception of maybe one visit during my senior year to St. Bonaventure, I didn't even take a visit. I answer phone calls or whatever. I was just so locked in on winning. I wanted to win a state championship in the worst way as a high school player and just getting better. And that's why it's often my message to kids today when they're like, my recruiting video or this, that. I'm like, here, how about this thing called Get Better? How about this thing called Win? Where you're at, be great where you're at, and then let the next step take care of itself. And part of that really was my experience. So fortunately for me, we did win and we did have success. And the way it all played out, I heard from other people, was Bob Hurley Sr., who was a great coach at St. Anthony's, saw me play during the playoffs or state championship or tournament of champions. And Coach Dunn at Penn State was recruiting his point guard. And Coach Hurley said, listen, you're not going to get my point guard, but you should offer Crispin. And probably within a month, I was committed to Penn State. So it's, how do you explain that? And I kind of had this sense that, back then there wasn't cell phones. I actually went on a visit to William & Mary. Maryland had gotten involved, Northwestern had gotten involved. So I had some bigger schools recruiting me at the end. But I had come from a visit from William & Mary. I got off the plane. My mom picked me up and she said, hey, guess who called? And I said, Penn State. And she said, yeah. I said, that's where I'm going. So I took one unofficial. I walked across campus, saw the facilities, and was like, I'm in. It was home for me. So it was not like this long recruiting, let us send you all these materials. Like, now I knew I'd found a home and it was done. And that was my abbreviated recruiting story. And I had some good schools involved, and they were telling me I could score 2,000 points, and my dad kind of thought they were lying. But, looking back, I'm very thankful I was patient.
Yeah. And 1,986 points later, it's all history.
Yeah, I mean, even that, some things just, they work out the way they work out. And, I'm married to my beautiful wife, who's a Penn Stater. And, we lived there during the off season for a number of years, and, we count that as home. So, many people don't get that gift. It really is a gift. So it's one I'm thankful for.
Yeah. So let's get into some of these individual moments here at Penn State. So let's jump to your senior year, Big Ten tournament. And going into the Big Ten tournament, do you guys think that you had to win a few games in order to make the big dance?
Yeah. Our backs were against the wall. We felt like it. We had absolutely blown a game on senior day against Ohio State. I'll never forget it. It was one of the lowest points ever for me, because it was so important to me to play in the NCAA tournament and do something in the NCAA tournament. For myself and the other seniors in our team, like, we were just locked in. Like, there was nothing else. It was just that. And we were up 20 at the half and blew it, and played scared probably, and just blew it. Actually, the game I was at, or the Penn State game I was at in early March, it was the same date, apparently, 19 years later as that game. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I was weeping after the game but anyway, so our backs against the wall. We played at Iowa. We played a great game, won a great game. Then we went to the tourney, and we were like, listen, we knew we had to win at least one. 2 would be a lock. And, I often use this story. We beat Michigan at the buzzer, great experience. We didn't play great, but good enough to win. And then you play Michigan State in the second round, I think there were 2 in the country at the time, a national championship contender, had never beaten them up until that point. And it's one of my all-time favorite games easily at any level. Just from an experiential standpoint, I mean, we had foul trouble. We had all this stuff. We had the guys playing that barely played the whole season, and we just figured out a way to win. And it was, you look back and you look at the loss, and you look at the down moment of a senior day that was just brutal. And I often use that example. I've probably used it with my team multiple times as a coach, of just saying, like, listen, you don't know what the script is. Like, there's a script and you don't write it, and you just got to roll with it. And if you roll with it and keep persevering, you often find these stories that are just life-changing, and, stories that really are for life. And that's one of them for me.
Yeah, so in that game against Michigan State, just for the viewers, you guys can look it up on YouTube. You can actually see a bunch of Joe's highlights on YouTube. They're not too ancient, they're only from the early 2000s, late 90s.
And not in HD, that's for sure.
That is for sure. But so your guys are up by 1 with 20 seconds left, and 2 guys come at you, and you kind of do a step through. Did you jack up that 3 because you thought you got bumped and you're going to get the call, or are you taking that 3 regardless?
Well, no, I was taking it regardless. We always joke with Tyler Smith, who passed me the ball, who was probably searching me out. He probably knew that if he didn't give me that ball, I was probably not going to be pleasant if something good didn't happen, even though he was my boy. So yeah, I probably was taking that. But it's funny, like you have these moments, when people talk about the zone, the last 12 to 13 minutes of that game, it was like an out of body experience. Like it's one of the most powerful experiences. You don't, as many good games as I was able to have, even through my professional career, you play long enough that you get these great fun moments. But this was 12 minutes where I was just so locked in, and I think I scored almost all my points in the last 12 or 14 minutes of the game and got going. And I can, to this day, picture that ball being released and just knowing it was going in. Like it was just like chill. And it was, looking back, because then they play it during the Big Ten tournament, and you're like, it was like a playground. Like it was, I can picture the ball going in the air going, yep, that's in, and just jog back on defense like it was nothing. And, again, like it's not something you take credit for. That's a gift. You don't get that. You don't get that. That's just something you hoop, you play the game, you ball, and it's almost like sometimes it comes to you, and it did that game. So that's one I'm very thankful for.
So when you guys won that game, then you figured, hey, we're going to be in the tournament.
Yeah, we did, clearly, because we stunk the next day. I don't think we stunk, but we ran out of gas. We did. We ran out of gas. And Iowa, I think we lost to Iowa, and they probably needed to win one more. So it's the way it goes.
Yeah. So you lose to Iowa, I think it was by 18 or 20 maybe. So yeah, just ran out of gas. But I mean, then you go on, you guys beat Providence in the first round, and then you take down UNC as a major underdog in the second round to advance to the Sweet 16. And that UNC game had to be pretty special winning that one.
Yeah, it was. I've often, my team at Rowan was in the NCAA tournament, not this past year, but the year before. And I was just tell them, but also tell college players we talk to, and even professional teams that get into the playoffs, like so much of winning at the last level, especially in a tournament situation, is matchups. And that they were an amazingly talented team. I think I played against 3 or 4 of them in the pros. But we were a good matchup for them. They were a little more free flowing, ACC, not overly physical. They were big, but not super physical. Early on, I remember looking at some of our beat reporters at the first TV timeout. I think we were down 7, and I told them, we got this. And they thought I was nuts, but I meant it. The games, it's just hard to sometimes describe. You just kind of know, like when the game has a feel that is conducive to you winning, you just sense it. You just know it. And I just remember like, no, we got this. And I remember talking to Joe Forte years later actually about it. And he's like, yeah, we weren't at it. We just didn't have it, So that was just, and looking back, Superdome, all these different things. And at the time, I was horrible at enjoying it. Horrible. Just because I wanted to go to the Final Four. I wanted to just upset everything and win a national championship. Like that's just the way I thought. And I just can't help that. I always think that way. So for me, it was like, yep, that was cool. Let's go. And I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. It was great. Yeah, okay, that's great. Let's get on. Let's get ready. That's the way I approached it. But looking back, especially when March hits, it's like, oh my gosh, like you get to go to a Sweet 16. Like that's not normal, even though I thought it should be.
Yeah. Well, if you're a true competitor, it's very hard to live in the moment knowing what can be. I mean, you got your eye on the ultimate prize there. It's tough in a tournament setting.
Yeah, especially if you want to be an underdog and do something, you have to be somewhat delusional. You have to just think it's going to happen. That's the way it works.
Yeah. So then you guys go on, you lose to Temple. David Jackson was on here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, man, Temple, it's those 2 times. And at the time, I think I was wearing my burgundy suit. I said, you should kick me off my own show. I'm wearing Temple colors, man.
That's funny.
But I read something recently that your grandfather played for Temple in a Final Four. Is that right?
Yeah, 1958. He was he came off the bench behind Guy Rogers and Hal Lear, which means he didn't get to play a lot because they were 2 of the best guards in the country at the time. But they lost to Kentucky in the Final Four, 61-60. Yeah.
Wow.
At Rupp, nonetheless. That's how they did it back then. But yeah, that again, when you talk about winning, people, again, as a coach, I tell kids this all the time because I didn't get it. But winning is a gift. And Temple was a tough matchup for us because we'd beaten them earlier in the year. They were uber talented. And we had I think John was sick and Tyler Smith was sick. Like we had 2 guys that were sick. Like, what are you going to do? You know, we played 6.5, right? We played 7 guys. So 2 of your guys who average 30 minutes are out. So you look back on it and you go, geez, no wonder I should have been more thankful because a game like that comes along, that happens, and you're not very good.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to some questions here. One question is from actually one of my buddies, Jeff Noel, out of UN. He lives in North Carolina. He grew up in North Carolina. He says, in basketball, we tend to idolize points, assists, rebounds, blocks, ability to score, etc. What would you say is the most underrated thing a player can develop that makes him a valuable asset to the team? And how could a young player go about developing this?
Well, it's one of those things that I always did appreciate as a player because I typically didn't do it great. I was the loud one. And I was the one scoring points and getting in the headlines or whatever. Oftentimes, at least on my team, that was my role. But I always had an appreciation for guys who just help you win. Like you just trust them. And, speaking to those Penn State teams, I mean, I tell people all the time, Titus Ivory was just unbelievable. He averaged 15 or 16 a game. He defended big players and small players and got loose balls and steals and hit big shots. And he was fine just letting me be number 1 on the scouting report. Certainly helped him be better, but he's just a guy who just made you win, right? I used to say about Titus, I'd take him on any team ever, anywhere, because he's going to make you win. And as a coach, I tell my assistants all the time, who are the guys that I don't want to take off the court? And the answer, they'll tell me names, and the answer is always the guys I trust the most on defense. So I joke, my team, I think we've led the league in scoring or been 0.1 away every year in my 4 years as a head coach. And, I plan on doing that forever. I want to lead the league in scoring every year. But, I joke about offense winning and actually just published a book called Offense Wins. But defense is what matters. Defense, trust in guys. And it's not just defense because usually those guys are trustworthy in their decision making. So a decision maker is just somebody who's making simple plays all the time. A great decision maker defensively is somebody who takes the scouting report. He closes out the right way. He's playing guys the right way. These are high IQ things that a lot of kids just don't think are important, or they're not taught them at younger ages. And oftentimes it's really, really simple for younger kids to work on. Is if you get to the end of a game and you're in 8th grade, parents want to know how many turnovers did you have, how many whatever. I'm probably going to ask 2 things. 1, how many turnovers did you have? Did you turn the ball over? Did you give the ball to the other team? You can ask my son. I could bring him in right now and he can hear, well, what do I think about turning the ball over? When you give the ball to the other team, you don't get to score. And I love to score, so don't give it to the other team. So that's a decision-making thing. You're making multiple good decisions by your teams having the ball. And then the second is a little more nuanced. And this requires just kind of understanding the game did the coach feel better? And was your team better defensively when you were on the court? And typically the best way to ask that is just real simple. When you were on the court, did your team win? Like kids nowadays and parents, like we just don't get it. We just don't get it. And I think the playground used to teach us better than AAU does is like, I don't care about your points and your assists and your this, that, and the other thing. Like, I don't care about your self-actualization unless it happens in the context of the team winning the game. And when I was a player, I think I was a pretty nice guy in general, but I could be a jerk. And because it was like, guys, like, I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about my feelings. It's about winning the game. And, you know, nowadays I think kids struggle with that because you want to be good at all these measurables, but it's often the things that you really have a hard time measuring that matter the most and that really keep you in the game and take you to the next level.
I've been watching The Last Dance Sunday night, obviously with Jordan, and it seems that that's one of the things that Jordan took to the extreme. You know, he wasn't worried about being a nice guy. He was getting on guys, and he was getting on guys he knew he could get on. But at the end of the last segment, last Sunday, you know, it brought him to tears, kind of thinking, like, looking back, you know, hey, some guys may have felt that way.
Oh, I understood, like, when he had that, it was a powerful moment, I think, for anybody. But for me as a competitor, you know, I've said to my wife, like, I did that for, geez, the solid 15 to 17 years of my life, where it revolved around the competition. And some things like that, I think you see it in this documentary with Jordan, is like it made him so unbelievable in the game of basketball. Of course, he had the talent and he had the athleticism. I mean, he had incredible, but it was that edge and that willingness to just lay it on the line and find the edge every night that made him, you know, the greatest player ever. Well, that doesn't make you great on a Saturday afternoon, a volleyball game at home. I experienced that. I was not fun to be around as a competitor. Now, as I got older, I learned just how to put it in better perspective. And frankly, I think I became a better competitor because I played with more joy. I mean, I enjoyed the game more. And to me, that was a hard issue. That was a spiritual issue of just my identity was so wrapped up into my performance. And I think you can see that. I mean, you can see that in any professional athlete. That's a struggle. Anybody who's great at anything, that's a radical struggle. That you often lose the joy because it's just all about the competition and the win and the get this. And that can cut you both ways.
That's so hard at a young age to realize what that moment is like and to have that joy of the sport. And then you start to get that as you mature, especially for us, you know, you mature in your faith and you understand, hey, you know what, these are moments that God has gifted me with, and you have to enjoy the moment. But when you're young and, you know, you're so competitive. I mean, just even stupid things like in my basement, my brother and I are throwing ping pong paddles at each other's head across the table. It's just how it was.
I think during this quarantine, I must admit, there's been a couple ping pong paddles that have broken at my hand. So it still happens.
Between you and your brother or your kids?
Oh, no, my son Elijah beat me a couple times. I was not happy.
I love it.
And he'll like that that's out there. But I am currently on a winning streak, so all is well.
All right. Well, there you go, Elijah. Step up your game. I got some DVDs I can send you from some shows we used to watch back in the day while we were practicing ping pong, like crazy techniques.
That's great. That's great.
Before we move on to the next segment, just want to thank you, Sheets, for the sponsorship. Sheets Run and Done. Sheets is great. We miss Sheets. Spot where it's at. My kids love Sheets, man. Love Sheets. They think Sheets has got, you know, I don't know, if Sheets could charge double for the Crispin family and my kids would pay it. Folks, I did not pay Joe Crispin to say that. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. So Sheets, you know, you're probably good. Joe, just by you saying that, I'm probably good for another 3 or 4 weeks with this banner behind me. Thank you for that. Let's see, just a quick comment here before we move on to the next segment. It says, Joe and John were two of the best players I've seen in South Jersey, and I got lucky enough to play against John. Okay, and then he asked a question, but we're going to get to that in a second. Brad Rowan. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll get to the other question. I have that in the next segment. So, Yeah, let's move on. Let's get to the let's get to the rapid fire round real quick, and then we'll jump on to the last segment here. So if you got your water or your Gatorade towel there, I don't want you to be sweating bullets here.
I keep it cool in the fourth quarter. I like the fourth quarter.
All right, folks. Joe Crispin here for the zip code rapid fire round. Joe, you ready?
Ready to go.
You could go back to one moment in your playing career. What would it be?
Wow. One particular moment.
Yes.
Change it?
No, if you can just go back and relive it.
I would go to the NCAA tournament. You're playing, college and high school are similar. Like high school, I always say the powerful thing about being a high school player is playing for community. And I think that's the powerful thing about playing at Penn State is you're playing for the community. And like I said earlier, I'd want to relive it to enjoy it more, frankly, because I would.
Best college basketball atmosphere you've played in?
Wow. This is hard to say. There's frankly the one I probably have to say is Dayton. The other one that comes to mind is Michigan State, but because they were just unbelievable. I mean, there was a wave of emotion that we got smoked. We were up 15 and we lost by 20 because it was just so powerful, the energy. But Dayton, we played there my freshman year in the NIT, and I'll just never forget it. Like it was packed and it was unbelievable energy. And I just remember thinking, like, I didn't know anything about Dayton at the time. I didn't even know what conference they were in when we played them. And I was like, that's the greatest atmosphere and game that I've ever had. And even our seniors, Pete Lisicki, I remember saying, like, that was special. So Dayton really is up there.
So as a fan, you're saying put it on your bucket list, go to Dayton, see a game?
Make sure it's a good one. Yeah, if it's a good one, yeah. I mean, there's something about the noise and the way it's kind of the architecture. It's a very, very unique and special place in college basketball, and that's probably why they do play that first round there.
If I give you 100 free throws right now, how many would you make?
I'd probably say 98. Depends if you put something. It depends if you put something on the line. I might get bored and make 95 or 96. But free throws, they should be easy. Shoot, I spent 25 years of my life practicing them. I mean,
what if I gave you 100? What if I gave you 100 college 3-point shots right now? How many would you hit?
Frankly, I'd probably get tired. Do I have breaks in between?
I'll give you some breaks.
All right, give some breaks. I'm gonna shoot 85% or so.
In one word, how would your teammates describe you?
I think the question I have to ask is win. Because I think I was a more enjoyable teammate at 30 than I was at 17. I think usually the word to describe me is intense. I was intense.
One hobby besides basketball?
I'd probably say woodworking, building stuff. I'm into that.
Favorite sports movie?
Chariots of Fire.
One thing you're bad at?
One thing I'm bad at. I probably recognize. This is so random. Like, there's plenty I'm bad at.
It could be a sport. I mean, it could be anything.
I'm just thinking like a random thing of like actually recognizing when something should be cleaned up around the house. Yeah, I'm like, my wife would say, like, you didn't see that? And I'm like, didn't see it at all. Didn't even know, like, had no idea.
So she's watching right now. She's just shaking her head.
Absolutely.
Loudest moment of your playing career, high school, college, or professional?
The one I most remember is at Michigan State, my senior year. We were up playing a great first half, and they came out and just went nuts. And it felt like it felt like there was a weight on, I'd never forget it. It felt like there was a weight on my shoulders. Like I was playing with a weight vest. It was so powerful when they went on this run. So that has to take the cake.
Favorite sport to watch besides basketball?
I watch a lot of basketball. Probably football. Football.
Who is the most talented player you've ever played with?
Most talented. I mean, it has to be. I played with Kobe. He's got to be the most talented. He was unbelievable. He would do things in practice, and practice would just be like, we'd look at each other and go, "Did he just do that?" Like, it happened multiple times. Best team in the world, and he did that.
Wow.
Yeah, I can remember just like, what? And he was 23 at the time. He was incredible.
We'll hopefully get to some of that in a couple minutes. Most talented player you've ever played against?
So I don't know if it's most talented, but the most difficult player, people ask me all the time about one-on-one, and most difficult player, Stephon Marbury, who I played with the Suns. I actually guarded him in the preseason with the Lakers. I remember Phil Jackson saying, "I want to see how you do with Marbury." And I remember saying to Lindsey Hunter, I leaned over, like getting out of the huddle. I said, "Lindsey, can anybody guard Marbury?" And he goes, "No, don't worry about it. Nobody can." So naturally, Steph saw me, and I joked about this with him months later when I was playing with him. He saw me, and every play was an ISO. And Steph was like, "Get out of my way! Like, I got this rookie kid on me. Like, offense was off. Steph was an unbelievable one-on-one player, unbelievable. And I played with him with the Suns, and he was so explosive. And I mean, you talk about like a tough New York City guard, floaters. Like, he was unbelievable.
And the last question. This is the toughest question. Where will the zip code be in 5 years?
It's blowing up, man. It's blowing up. You gotta keep this trajectory. Let's make sure it blows up in a good way.
All right, good. Yeah, good answer. Thank you.
Big old sheet sign behind you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, let's blow it up in a good way.
Blowing up in a good way.
All right. And with that, the rapid fire round, Joe Crispin, is over.
That was good. Good questions.
You passed. Last week, Jawan Johnson, he didn't really want to answer where the zip code will be. He didn't know. I felt a little iffy about, him not knowing. So I'm glad you said that. Good.
There you go. No, it's full confidence.
So just want to let you guys know that I think the questions on the side, they're taking a long time to load. Some pop in, some don't. So I apologize if you've asked Joe a question and we have not received it. Maybe down the line, if Joe's a friend of the show, there will be a part 2 somewhere. But as of now, some of those questions aren't popping up. But Joe, for the last segment of the show, let's get to your professional career. So one of my jobs with the show, I feel like, is to give people a backlot tour, so to speak.
Yep.
So can you first talk about, you graduate, what the heck happens after that as far as the NBA?
My career was it was a whirlwind, and I often tell people about my professional career like it was a gift I didn't want, frankly. Like my goal was to be in the NBA for 12 years and be Steve Nash, essentially. Like, I wanted the ball, and I felt confident I could do so. And coming out of college, I had we did the pre-draft thing. I wasn't great with that. It's just kind of a weird environment. It's not really conducive to the way I played, but I was fortunate enough to not get drafted, frankly, because the Lakers were interested in me. I played summer league with the Lakers, played well, signed with them to go to camp. They gave me a minimal amount to come, and I had some good options. Made the team essentially for the first month of the season. Went through training camp, played for the first month in November, played 6 games out of maybe 20 or whatever we played that month. I'm sure our record was great with me there. I think we were 18-1 or something like that. Or it was one game we lost at Phoenix, and I to this day believe Phil let us lose. Like, he didn't call timeouts. I mean, he came in. I'll never forget it. Like, welcome to the pros. Phil came in the locker room, and I was on the baseline. I scored 2 points in that game. I was on the baseline, and I remember saying to Lindsey Hunter, one of the guys, I was like, is he letting us lose? Does he want us to lose? Because, like, he wasn't doing what we normally would. And, you know, I'm coming from college where every game is live and die, and it's like life and death. And Lindsey goes, he might be. So he came in the locker room later, and he was like, we needed that. We needed that. Y'all needed to lose. And I just remember being like, what is going on? Like, you know, this is a different universe. But anyway, Derek Fisher came back from an injury sooner than they expected, which kind of hurt me. But so they were, and frankly, I didn't play great. I didn't have the same swagger. I didn't have the same confidence. You know, it was hit or miss on the amount you played. It was tough for me to get used to that. So I got released. I actually went to the ABA for about a month, 3 games actually, because the season started later. I played for Scott Brooks, who's now the head coach at the Wizards. And I averaged 37 and 14, 14 assists. I just blew up. My confidence was super high. It was a fast-paced game, ball screen, shoot threes. Like, it was a dream. And, you know, I had various interests. And then I signed with the Suns. Scott Skiles was the head coach. Great guy for me to play for, but he was gone within 5 weeks. And after he left, Frank Johnson took over, and he told me he didn't want to shoot as many threes. So that meant didn't play me. And naturally, he'd be run out of the league as a heretic now, but back then it was kind of normal. I always tell people, getting a 3-point shot off my rookie year was a joke. It was the easiest thing I've ever done in my life in basketball, because they didn't guard the line the way they do now. But anyway, we finished out the year. We don't make the playoffs, played summer league, and then went to camp with the Warriors. And when I tell you the next like 2-3 years, like, I did hit burnout mode, because I went to camp. I went to China on a touring team to prep for the season, went to the Warriors. It wasn't the right situation. I should have gone somewhere else. I was cut within 10 days or so. Took my new bride to beautiful Gary, Indiana for the CBA. Got cut from a team in the CBA. I actually had a double-double the week before. I had 29 and 10 assists, and the guy cut me. I don't know what he was doing. And I had 45 when I saw him a month later. And within a month, I was at Rockford, Illinois, played for the CBA in Rockford, Illinois for about a month and a half, then went to Greece for 5 months. Came back, played summer league, went to camp with the Heat, got cut in a week or 2, did a touring team, then went to the ABA for the season. And then after the ABA, I played in the USBL, and then went to summer league again. And I mean, that was my first 2-3 years of my professional career. And frankly, when that was done, I was kind of done. And I had a good season in the ABA. Was the MVP. It was a good experience, but I was fried out emotionally and mentally on basketball. And that was my first 3 seasons, and that's the abbreviated version.
And then after that, you go over and have a nice career in Europe. You win a championship. You're leading scorer some of the seasons over there. Can you just give me a little excerpt about how the basketball is different from the NBA when you're playing professionally in Europe?
Well, it's different because, geez, it's I mean, there's some great situations, and I was blessed. I had really good situations, great cities I played for. You know, I played for places that I'd like to go back to. I mean, you know, I always had a connection with the people I played for. But you know, my game was, I guess, ahead of its time. Like, back in the day, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was like heresy to shoot NBA threes off the dribble all the time. And frankly, that's what I was best at. So NBA teams didn't love that. How much did European coaches like that? Guys who are scared for their life and need control. I was a wild card to them. And I usually helped them win. I usually took pride in that we won more than we should. But I had to find my niche in Europe. And after my fourth season, I had gone to Greece on a EuroLeague team. It was a big team. We lost in the championship, but they owed me half my money when I left, and I just never wanted to go back. It was a big team, and they owed me money. I'm like, why would I want to go back to Europe? We finally got in a good situation in Poland that following year, and we realized, my wife and I, just, we can do this. Like, this is not bad. Like, this is a blessing. We're making good money. I'm enjoying playing the game, and I kind of had to go through my own rehab experience of like, yo, what am I doing here? Like, this is exhausting. Living away from home, all this stuff. And fortunately, I went to Italy the next season. Full year, was there for 9 months, and it was a little bit of a circus, but I had a real positive experience. Loved living in the town. My oldest son was born there in Teramo, and then it was Europe from that point forward. So I went from Italy to Turkey for a couple seasons, or actually to Spain, then Turkey, and then back to Italy for a few seasons before I finished up in Ukraine. And like I said, I was really blessed with some good opportunities, and just playing for a people and a community that appreciated what I was doing. I viewed, I don't know that I could articulate it my whole career, but I always viewed the ability to play basketball as a service to the community. Like, it's about what you can give to people. It's about what you can give. So for me at Pittman, it was about me playing for Pittman, for people who came to enjoy watching my brother and I, especially, and our friends. Essentially, that's what it was: play the game. And when I went to Penn State, it was like, I'm playing for you. That's what it's about. And that's the same thing at the highest level. And I think when people know you're doing that for them, my Italian wasn't great, my Spanish wasn't great, my Turkish wasn't great, my Russian wasn't great, but I was playing for them. And over the course of my career, I had, probably my favorite season was that year we won the championship in Brindisi. But all in all, I think, all of them were really positive experiences.
Yeah. Oh, real quick before I forget, we're going to jump back to the NBA here. Did you get a ring for that season with the Lakers or no, since you were there?
No, and I didn't deserve it. I spent most of the season with the Suns. Really, when it was all said and done, I signed with the Suns for guarantee the rest of the year in the beginning of January. So I would have felt weird anyway.
So with the Suns, you're playing with Penny Hardaway, Stephon Marbury, Joe Johnson, Sean Marion, and then with the Lakers, obviously with Kobe, Shaq, Rick Fox, Robert Horry, Derek Fisher. When you first got into the league, were there any like, wow, this is crazy moments? Like, I'm in the NBA right now and I'm playing with Kobe and Shaq. Like, where am I?
I honestly, it probably didn't hit me until the first game I think I played officially in the season. When it was like real regular season, Staples Center, the whole thing. I guess I'm different. Like, I just don't care about all this stuff. Like, I just don't care about all this stuff. Like, I was just a dude who was 22 years old and wanted to hoop at the highest level. I didn't care about paychecks. I didn't care about the glitz and the glamour. And like, I just wanted to ball at the highest level. Really, that's who I was. And, when you go to training camp, like, yeah, you hop on the private jet and we flew to Hawaii, and I had my own hotel suite that I was like on the water, and I'm going, well, this is interesting. And yeah, you get into the team meeting and Phil hands you the notebook and you have this team dinner, and it probably cost more than I'd ever pay a meal up to that point in my life. But you're so focused on the simple fact that you got a ball the next day and you're fighting for your basketball life and that you believe you can do it, that there's just no time for that, to be honest with you. Like, the people are still people. You relate to them as people. I think I enjoyed it, but I think, like, because I had that perspective, I was able to fight. And I think that the only time it hit me was when that regular season came. I was like, whoa, this is real. And, one of the goofy stories I actually told my son, because one of the tapes we found was my first game that I played was against the Magic. And I think I was 1 for 2 from the free throw line. So it was my first point. And, you know, in my mind, it was the first of many. Like, that's the way I thought. But when I was walking off the court, Cuba Gooding Jr. says, "Hey, congrats, Joe." And I was like, "Thanks, Cuba." And I'm like, what is this? What? You know, Cuba, thanks, Cuba. Appreciate it, man. Like, where am I? So that was one that stood out of like, what? You know? And that didn't happen often to me. It honestly didn't. I just kind of rolled with things. But that was one that it was like, oh, this is a little, you know, the sweet on the water. But at the same time, we I don't know, we traveled charter at Penn State. I just thought that's what you did. Of course, then you go to Europe and you realize, oh, geez, that's not what everybody does. But that's what we do in the States.
So, because I mean, you did have a few games against Jordan as well, right? Like, no, like, wow, this is crazy. I'm on the same floor as Jordan. Nothing like that.
Yeah, that was probably one. I will say this, probably not. So we played the Wizards at Washington. I actually had my career high, frankly, just because I got pissed that I wasn't being aggressive enough. And again, getting threes off was pretty easy. I probably wasn't as aggressive as I could have been, and I'd had like a so-so first half, and we got down 15, and he, you know, coach put me back in. We were down 14 or 15, and I was like, forget this. I'm shooting every time. And I hit 3 in a row. And, you know, we ended up cutting it to 6 or 7 and made it semi-interesting. But during the course of the game, I didn't think much of it. But when we played them back in Phoenix, you know, one of the pictures on my wall is one that a friend of mine took of me guarding Jordan. And, you know, looking back now, you're like, jeez. But at the same time, like when you're playing against the guy, you're like, I don't want him to score on me. This is Jordan. I don't want him to score on me. And sure enough, with Phoenix, it wasn't really with the way I played, and he hit the game winner. And, you know, this is definitely, we all knew it was the tail end of his career. I remember saying to Dan Marley, you know, Dan, I don't like losing, but the game was probably meaningless. We knew we weren't going to be in the playoffs. At least I can say Jordan hit the game winner on my squad. I don't know if that's wrong or not, but I definitely said that to Dan Marley, and I doubt Dan would remember it, but I definitely said it. I can remember it to this day. And I actually saw Jordan in the practice gym because I was shooting afterwards because I think I was like 1 for 3 or something in the game, and I was mad. So I was shooting, and I actually told him the story how I had hit a half-court shot to win his jersey at a Stanford basketball game, which is a whole nother story. That's a great one.
Go ahead. Can we hear it?
So we were playing the Warriors, and we were in between games. So there was a day between games, and Ryan Mendez, who I'd met in the 3-point contest, was a friend also, Jake Voskels, who I played with. And, you know, he got us tickets to the Stanford, Arizona game. And we were like, oh, great. You know, we get the day practice in the morning or whatever we did, and we were free. So we went over there, went to the game. We were sitting down low, and at halftime, Ryan and I were just mingling around, waiting for the bathrooms to clear. And this girl asked me, you know, hey, do you want to shoot in a contest? I said, I don't know if I should do that. I said, nah, I don't think I will. And she goes, why wouldn't you shoot in the contest? I said, believe it or not, I play in the NBA. And she said, nah. Actually, I do. I play for the Phoenix Suns. And she goes, no. I said, I'm not lying to you. You know, and I'm thinking in my head, this is a lose-lose, right? Like, okay, I shoot a couple free throws, I make it, and everyone goes, oh, that's great. You know, a 90% free throw shooter. Like, that's stupid. If I miss it, I'm an idiot. So I'm like, I'm not doing it. So then Ryan Mendez comes over and he goes, hey, I got to catch up with Ryan. I tell this story so many times. I haven't seen him for years. He goes, what's going on? I said, she wants me to shoot in a contest. And Ryan, of course, is like, oh, yeah, he's shooting in the contest. Absolutely, he's doing it. And I said, all right, well, what do I have to do? She said, you got 2 half-court shots to make 1. And I said, oh, all right. Like, I don't think I'm going to make the half-court shot. Like, yeah, okay, we shoot half-court shots every day. Yeah, in the NBA, you do it for money, right? Like, you do it. And it was okay, but I'm not going to make it, right? Okay, sure. What do I win? Oh, this autographed Jordan jersey. Oh, that's cool. Okay. All right, fine. I'll do that. When am I doing it? She goes, 1.5 minutes. Oh, okay. So the funny part is I walk out and he introduces me. The guy introduces me and says, Hey folks, your shooter for today, blah, blah, blah. It's Joe Crispin. Word has it that he recently played for the Los Angeles Lakers. And honestly, like, as I remember it, like, you could sense 6,500 people chuckle. They thought he was kidding. So the student section is going crazy. And I got a short clip of it somewhere. I got a short clip that the Suns guy put together for me. And the student section is going crazy, and I'm pumping them up. I take one dribble, nothing but net. First shot. And the place goes crazy. My buddy Jake was sitting elsewhere. Jake Bosco couldn't believe it. He didn't even know what was going on. And sure enough, after I hit it, the announcer was like, seriously, folks, this is Joe Crispin, who played for Penn State and now plays for the Phoenix Suns. So I leave the arena with this huge autographed Jordan jersey. It's actually in my parents' house right now. I probably will steal it back from them, put it in my basement. This autographed Jordan jersey, and I walk out of the arena. Everyone's like, hey, great year last year. That's great. Okay, thanks. And then I come back on the team plane the next day, and they're like, what in the world is this? I said, oh yeah, I won it. And then of course they made a story out of it and stuff like that, because who else in the NBA could have just been a random dude who they asked to shoot in a contest because he looks like a college student, because that's what I look like. So it is a fun story. It's probably why I need to put it in the basement, just because it's good. It's good story. And I told Jordan about it after that game, and he just laughed. That's great.
So we're going to get to the last question I have for you, and then we have one more question that was able to pop up. We see Shaq, being his jovial self. Anything from practice, like was that Shaq? Any fun stories just being in practice with those guys? What were those guys like playing with?
Well, it was a great group of dudes. I mean, they really were. Like, you just talk about good guys, veteran guys. Rick Fox, Mitch Richmond was his last year of his career, like, just a great guy. And Lindsey Hunter was a great guy. I mean, really good group of guys. Shaq was a big kid. I mean, and Shaq and I had a pretty good rapport, I think probably because we were polar opposites, and because I was just real. He actually flew my family out first class for my first game. And it was all him. I didn't ask for it. He was just like, I'm doing it. And I was like, seriously, you don't have to. He's like, I'm doing it. When do they want to come? I was like, I don't know, this weekend? This is Shaq. I mean, you talk about a different universe. He's like, all right. And he called his travel agents. We probably owned the travel agency, knowing Shaq. And she was like, all right, who is it? What do they need? Boop, done. Yeah, he did that. And, just not just professionals, but, you remember, like, you're playing a game. And Shaq was he was an amazing player. Like, people just have no idea. I remember, at that point, the game was pretty easy for him. He didn't really have to practice that hard and stuff like that. But he used to do things in a game, and when you saw it up close, like, he was getting hacked, and he had just such skill, and it was incredible. Yeah, because nowadays people say, oh, the post-up's dead. Well, the post-up's not dead if you have Shaq, who can shoot 65 or 69% out of post-ups. That was his reality. It was so and it wasn't just because he was physically dominant. He had this soft touch, and it was an incredible player. But he was definitely the one thing. The funny one I remember about Shaq is, we had our meeting room, or like video room, and this was kind of like the beginning of like the Kobe Shaq thing, and like Shaq was just messing around with it. And I just remember, like, it was nothing at that point. And something was out in the media, and there was some story. And again, I was just worried about balling the next day. I didn't pay that much attention to it. And I was sitting next to Shaq in the media room. And I remember Phil at the front of the media room. And naturally, I'm hanging on every word, right? I'm locked in on anything that's going on. And Shaq is just like, whatever, dude. I'm the best player in the world. So I remember Phil was like, Shaq. And he probably used a couple colorful words, like, you have to be freaking kidding me. Like, knock it off with this nonsense and put this to bed and blah, blah, blah. And I remember Shaq nudging me. And, it's, again, to Shaq, it would just be a normal, everyday kind of funny thing. And to me, I just remember it because Shaq, the message was, see, I got under Phil's skin. You see that? Look at that. Look at Phil getting pissed. Like, this is great. You know, like, he's a big kid. And I remember, like, for me, having to hold back a smile because I'm like, I can't get caught laughing at Shaq. You know what I mean? Like, I get in trouble. But yeah, that was how Shaq was. He was like, I'm just having fun with it. I'm bored sometimes being the best player in the world. Give me a break. You know, I got under Phil's skin. That's fun. You know, I'm be just like a kid doing it for his 8th grade coach.
Were those practices super intense, especially with Kobe's drive and most everybody's drive on that team?
Yeah, it was a good situation for me actually, because in preseason they were so good that it wasn't stupid intense. Like, I went to camp with the Heat, and Pat Riley he's an amazing coach, but we practiced for hours upon hours upon hours on end. I remember getting to the first preseason game being like, holy cow, I was in unbelievable shape, run all day shape, and I was done. Like, I was tired. I was like, shoot, I don't want to play today. I'm so tired. That wasn't like that. We worked hard, but we worked smart because he had a lot of veteran players. But when we competed, and I remember Brian Shaw throwing me to the ground one time because I don't know, I was competing. I got after it. Something happened, and it was like, yeah, we were competing, and this was a good group of competitors. And I think Kobe was like late to training camp that year, was an injury or something like that. Shaq would depend on the day, and then once the season starts, you don't practice. We didn't practice like for real. It was like depending on the situation. I remember the first game I was cleared. We had a day off before the game, and I was like, what? But to those guys, I understand. Like, later in my career, I was like, yeah, I can use a day off before the game. Like, yo, I'm taking the day off. I used to tell my coach, I'm 30 years old. I'm ready. Let's go. Let me be fresh tomorrow. That's how it was with that group. Like, they were a well-oiled machine, more or less. So, but when we competed, it was always intense, and especially Kobe at that point. Like, when people say you played with Kobe, I'm like, well, I played with a young Kobe. Like, Kobe was only a year older than me. He's from Philly. I'm from South Jersey. Like, it was like, in my world, yeah, you're an amazing player, but if we saw each other in the Sunny Hill Lake, I'm trying to beat you. Like, that's the way I thought. And, he probably would have won, but that's the way I thought. So Kobe was like, you're a year older than me, man. I'm coming at you. And he's coming at everybody. He was coming at everybody. And that's just the way he was. Like, it didn't matter. Like, if I scored on him in one-on-one, he was going to hack the crap out of me the next time. And I used to joke about it. Like, oh, you need to hack me? Like, give me a break. You don't need to hack me to stop me. Like, but he did, because he was a great competitor. So, but once, you had to pick and choose those moments in the preseason. Actually, once the game starts, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. I got to be honest. I could listen to these stories forever, man. But 67 minutes. I'm going to get to the very last question. Hey, there could be a part 2 down the road if you'll be.
I wouldn't mind. I told you these stories kind of come up when you start asking questions. I honestly forget about them until people ask questions.
Well, I love it, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers love it too. So yeah, we'll have to have you back again, man. But I'm gonna end with this question because it's a good segue to your where you're at in your life right now. We have a question from Linda Oman that says, "What are Joe's career coaching goals?" So take a bite out of that one.
Well, I can't help but be very ambitious. Like, when I think about my playing career, my goal was to be in the NBA for 12 years and be an all-star, for crying out loud. I wanted to be Mark Price. So I do want to coach at the Division I level. I don't make any secret about it. I want to coach at the highest level, and I love college basketball. I love NBA basketball, but I love college basketball because of the community feel and because of just the impact you get these kids at such a pivotal moment of their lives, and you can help them become pros and better men. The difference with me as a coach, as opposed to when I was a player, is that, I have 5 kids, and I'm not chasing it like stupid. I'm learning the craft. I love where I'm at. I'm thankful for where I am. I'm learning how to coach and how I want to coach and how I want my teams to play and how I can become a better teacher. And then my belief is that, if I'm really as good as I want to be, that the next door will open and I'll walk through it. So yeah, my ambitions, I mean, I still feel like when I was in college, I wanted to win a national title, and now I'm at Rowan. I want to win a national title, and I want to go to a Division I school and win a national title. That's the way I think, and it'll never be shut off ever. And we'll see how it'll all work out and play out. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it.
And thank you, Linda, for that question. Good friend of the family, good friend of the show. And with that, folks, that will conclude the zip code. Real quick, Crispin Basketball, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And you can go to their website as well to see other things that Joe does in the community and with other teams that he coaches for. There's different tournaments and things that you guys run through that?
Yeah, we do a host of things. I do things for kids, really anywhere from kindergarten on up. Run a lot of leagues to get I want kids playing the game, and my mission is that kids would not just play the game better, which I think is an emphasis for a lot of people, but enjoy the game more. I think just in a lot of youth sports, the emphasis nowadays is on kids getting better, kids getting better, kids getting better. And it's like, to what end? Do they love it or not? Do they love the game? I've said to you, and this might have to be part 2, but just as a coach, I just think so much basketball lacks soul. It lacks just that something. You can coach basketball at any level of play where you suck the life out of it, and it just is blah. And I want to, we want to help create some artists and some, fun players who are confident. So we do things differently at a youth level, and that's really what our mission is. So my wife is an amazing administrator. So we have a good business. I got the vision and we run the programs, but we do a host of things for young players.
Yeah, and thank you to your wife as well for being instrumental in getting you on this show.
Yes, she's very good at that.
So, folks, that'll conclude the zip code. Joe, seriously, thanks, man, for coming on. Great stories, great insight. And I will hold you to a part 2 if you're willing.
It comes pretty easy, so I'm game. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
That'll be awesome. Well, seriously, thanks again for coming on the show. And folks, that'll conclude the zip code. I want to thank Sheets. Thank you for tuning in. As I said before, you can follow Crispin Basketball on Facebook and Instagram, and you can follow the zip code on Instagram and Facebook. And we're going to be doing a few other things as far as giveaways go. Sheets has given us some stuff. We'll give away that via Instagram. So stay tuned for that this week. And you can follow our YouTube channel as well. We'll clip this up and we will post it on YouTube. So if you forget some sort of insightful thing that Joe said, or if you want to see him pass that rapid fire round with such ease, you can go back and watch that as well. So as I say always, I love you, Shenango Valley. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you.